Right at the mile 4 marker, a pile of wet moose poop. And actually, that's the first sign of a moose I've seen in the 4 miles I've traversed so far, including some wetlands that look like they might be attractive. But it does answer the question, are there any moose in here? Oh, there's a snowshoe hare right in front of me. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. It's time to introduce myself to America's new national monument, and I'm taking you with me. We're heading up I-95, exiting in Sherman, motoring through Stacyville, and into the woods adjacent to the East Branch of the Penobscot River to visit Katahdin Woods and Waters. If you're planning your own visit, I'll give you some idea what to expect. And then I'll talk to the expert who can explain to me everything I got wrong. Park Superintendent Tim Hudson will be on the show later. This whole attempt to put a national park in the Maine woods has been controversial from the start, and many locals still oppose the monument designation. Maine's governor still opposes it and is doing his best to keep you from getting there. Others say that it actually has lived up to the promise of helping the northern Maine economy. I guess it's time to take a look. Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine is brought to you by Hammond Lumber, Bar Harbor Whale Watch, Napa Auto Parts, and EBS. As the show starts, it's dark, it's early, it's the morning of July 10th. It's 4 in the morning, and I'm asking myself that question I ask myself every time I go on one of these adventures. Why can't I just do one of those radio shows where an intern brings me coffee? I'm up at the crack of pre-dawn, getting ready to head north, going up to visit an area that was famously described by a Maine governor as being full of mosquitoes. Mosquito Land. Destination, Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument. This is going to be my first trip since it's officially been named a monument. And I want to see, well, number one, just how many mosquitoes are there. But number two, what else would attract people from all over America to come to this remote corner of Maine? Is this something that really would attract visitors from all over the world to visit a remote corner of Maine? Heading out early, since that's when the mosquitoes could be at their worst, and I can get a good assessment. But also, it's a good chance to see if there are any moose around before they head to the bogs and streams to cool themselves down in a hot summer sun. There are supposed to be some rain showers coming in this afternoon. I'd like to beat those. And maybe if I get up there early enough, I'll have most of it to myself. Of course, it's 2 hours away from my house. .30 in the morning. I'm at the Stillwater exit in Old Town, heading on to I-95. It's now become clear I've made a serious error. Dunkin' Donuts is closed. The convenience store for Dysart's travel stop on the right side is closed. Travel spot on the left side is closed. There's a rule of thumb that whenever I head into the woods like this, I should have something that ends in O's. Fritos, Doritos, Cheetos. But I'm getting out of the highway heading north without a vital food supply. Good thing I have a full tank of gas. Sun is not yet up this morning. I have one major goal as I head north, past the area where we're now hitting 75 miles an hour. And my major goal is to not hit a moose. Usual strategy, find a truck going as fast as I want to go and tuck in behind him. It's now 4:42 in the morning. The sun has still not cracked the horizon yet. Visibility has improved. But my strategy is not working. I have not found a northbound truck that'll shield me through the moose area. If there is one place that I would really be worried about smacking into one, it's as you're approaching the Piscataquis River on the way to Howland on I-95. There are more skid marks in the road here and occasional carcasses than anywhere else along I-95 until you get well north. I may have to slow down to 80. 5 in the morning, so far so good. I have not seen any moose. I have avoided hitting one porcupine. Families of crows have lined the road. You know, we have crows and ravens that you often see on the highway as you're heading north, especially first thing in the morning. And all the crows are in big groups right now because they hatch out their young sometime in mid-June. And then they go out to forage as one big family. So I'm seeing groups of 4 or 5, even 6 crows at a time on the highway. And then a raven just flew over. Now, ravens are funny. I don't know what it is, but when you see a black bird crossing the road, it's likely to be a crow. But the ravens, for whatever reason, like to fly along the highways. So a moment ago, I'm watching this black bird about a quarter mile ahead, flying up the highway, and I'm thinking to myself, that has got to be a raven. And yeah, it was. Coming up at the Millinocket exit, nice big signs. Route 157 to Allagash Wilderness Waterway and Baxter State Park. South entrance next right, north entrance, exit 264. Just passing over the Penobscot River. So far, no mention of a Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument up in this same neck of the woods. Apparently, Governor LePage is continuing to make good on his promise not to put up signs indicating we actually have a monument up here. Now, I'm not going to second guess the chief executive. I just observed that there is a sign as you cross the New Hampshire border into Maine that says Maine is open for business. And maybe if we could just get one of those signs for up here. Mile 241. This is the scenic view of Mount Katahdin off Interstate 95. You pull up here, take a look. Right now, all I can see is clouds on the horizon where the mountain ought to be. You know, the scenic view is nice, but I'd settle for a pit toilet. There's a flock of crows waiting for a handout. One guy sleeping in the parking lot. Well, I suppose under some circumstances this is a scenic view. But the clouds are already gathering on the western horizon. The top of Mount Katahdin is shrouded in fog. The bottom is only a dull grayish blue. What a jip. And just ahead of the Benedicta exit, a sign that says University of Maine Fort Kent, exit 264. So at least we're telling visitors where that is. If you just tuned in, thanks for riding along. I'm heading up to Katahdin Woods and Waters. You know, that place that President Barack Obama designated as a national monument last summer, using his authority under the Antiquities Act. One of those national monuments designated by the last 3 presidents that our current president promptly put under review. It's that place that the Interior Secretary visited in June and declared that not only is the existence of the monument now a settled question, but that it actually does look good enough to be a national park someday. And yet, in spite of that, it is official Maine policy to not tell anyone where it is. Yeah, that place. We're visiting it in person this morning. We've now completed our pre-dawn drive up the interstate. We'll head into the woods and see what's actually there in just a moment. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. Last summer, Maine got a new national monument, Katahdin Woods and Waters. It's between Baxter State Park and the East Branch of the Penobscot River. There's a couple of ways to get there, but neither one is marked. One way is to go up from Dolby near Millinocket along the Huber and Robert roads. The more common way is the way we're going, up the highway to Sherman and over Route 11 through Stacyville, veering off on the Swift Brook Road and down toward the Whetstone Bridge. Your Delormes or Google Maps can probably get you there. But I'm driving right now, and as it happens, I already know the way. In fact, this show has been there once before. 3 years ago, Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine was in there to go trout fishing with Maine Audubon, Trout Unlimited, and the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife as part of a Heritage Trout Waters Project survey. But now that it's a national monument, let's see if it's changed any. So, back in the car. Here we are. Exit 264, the Sherman exit. Baxter State Park, north entrance this way. That's also the entrance to Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument, but you wouldn't know that. And dead ahead, one of my favorite convenience stores in the state. An Irving stop right next to the Katahdin Valley Motel. You know, there was a lot of argument about whether or not a monument or national park up here would benefit the economy, but if I were that motel or this store owner, I'd be kind of happy. I know what makes me happy is it's only 5:30 in the morning, but they're open, so let's go get some food. In Stacyville, on Route 11, this is where it turns suddenly left in order to go down the river and over to Medway. This is Swift Brook Road. This is the actual entrance to how to get there, and all you see are signs that say, National Park, no. No indication whatsoever that you're actually supposed to go this way to get to the new Katahdin Woods and Waters Monument. Wow, this has been educational. And at 6 a.m., here I am, entering Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument. It's the first sign of any monument that I've seen, but that's because we've just crossed the line onto federal territory. The woods are alive with birds first thing in the morning. That's good news. I'm still waiting for my first mosquito to show up. I was told there would be a plague. Okay, let's go find out what this national monument's all about. Okay, here's one of the quirks of the National Monument. Where the property lines are, we're sort of bifurcated. The area where the old sporting camps were, Lungsoos camps, up along the east branch of the Penobscot. Then to get around to the other side of the river over Whetstone Bridge, you actually have to go across private logging roads. And so you're out of the monument for only a moment before you come across logging trucks and some active harvesting. And of course, these roads are what you expect out of logging roads. I'm not inviting anybody from New York City to bring their Prius in here. Oof. Not even sure I'm going to have anybody from Portland bring their Volvo in here. Whetstone Falls. This is where the east branch of the Penobscot runs underneath a bridge on Prentice Carlisle land. There's a sign right at the bridge that says, this bridge owner says National Park, no. This site is famous for its fly fishing, for its recreational aspects, for its picnic area, and especially for the pit toilet. Because if you're up in this section of the woods, pit toilets are kind of hard to come by. And I managed to outsmart this one. I brought my own toilet paper because there was none inside. Okay, I'm inside the National Monument. Something just happened. The road suddenly got better. I think the logging road section of this just headed south towards Medway. And now I'm definitely inside the loop. Not a lot of signage here. Oh yeah, here we are. Sandbank Campsite. So clearly I am now inside the monument. See, this is what I think is nuts. This is a good area even if there weren't a park here. This is a famous pit party place, which is now a campsite. Good pit toilets, good picnic tables, a great fishing spot, and it's mid-July, and there's nobody here. Okay, I'm at Sandbank Campground walking down to the river. Another mosquito just attacked me. The governor was right. It's plague and pestilence in here. My second or third mosquito. I am tiptoeing up to the riverbank, hoping to find a moose or a beaver. All I got is a pine warbler, a Swainson's thrush, black-throated green warbler, and red-eyed vireo. This is just what I needed. A map. You would have thought I'd remember to get one before coming here. All right. Okay, here's what the sign says. A new path for Maine's woods. Katahdin Woods and Waters Recreation Area is comprised of approximately 150,000 acres of land along the east branch of the Penobscot River. These lands are a special part of Maine, with world-class fishing, hunting, hiking, snowmobiling, canoeing, mountain biking, and a spectacular view of Mount Katahdin. And then it says, a long history, a promising future. The East Branch and the Seboice are known to have been used for millennia by Native Americans as canoe routes to Grand Lake Matagamon and on the Allagash and Aroostook watersheds. Campsites in use today by paddlers along the river were likely used by prehistoric travelers as well. The Penobscot River and its tributaries and branches are sacred to the broad collection of tribes known as the Wabanaki, which includes the Penobscots, Passamaquoddy, Micmac, and Maliseet. Penobscot place names are everywhere in the landscape. Wassataquik is a rendering of the Penobscot word for place where they spear fish. Lungsus refers to a wild beast, possibly a mountain lion. Katahdin may be translated as the greatest mountain. Historically, the valley has been explored by painters, poets, and a president. This pristine and unique Maine wilderness captivated Henry David Thoreau, who penned The Maine Woods based on his travels throughout the region in the 1840s. A young Teddy Roosevelt crossed the valley in 1879 on his way to climb Katahdin. The region has a long history of logging, and the East Branch was used for transporting logs to market, especially from regions farther north. An intricate series of logging roads was constructed in the region beginning in the mid-1800s. Today, many of these old roads are repurposed by Katahdin Woods and Waters into hiking, biking, and snowmobile trails. You're on a road trip with Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. It's been almost a year since President Barack Obama designated 150,000 acres of Maine's northern forest as a national monument. Today, we're inside Katahdin Woods and Waters, and we're about to embark on a ride around the Loop Road. At this point, I don't really know what to expect. It didn't even become federal land until late last summer. It was a particularly long and wet winter up here, so not much work could have happened here until mid-June. National parks usually have great roads, and you can take your Winnebago into them, and loads of good camping and tourist services. But what does a monument have? Especially where there hasn't been any time to build it. And the executive branch of Maine state government is opposed to it, so they won't even put up road signs showing how to get there. And even if we did, the access roads are rough logging roads, not the place city folk ought to be taking city cars. Exactly what are we about to see? Stand by. We'll take a look when Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine returns in a moment on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. Saturday mornings at 9, Sunday mornings at 8 on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. We're on a road trip today. I'm driving, you're in the passenger seat, and we're inside the new Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument. So far, it's a narrow dirt road to the entrance, bumpy along the private logging road parts of it, unmarked by any directional signs at all until you actually get onto the monument land, which is at least 3 miles away from the pavement in Stacyville. It's a humble beginning for a place that may someday be a national park. But didn't all parks start out this way? Many of these acres are accessible only by bike, sled, horse, or on foot. But there's a 16-mile loop road in the southern portion, and you are right at the beginning of it. It's a 16-mile loop road through this section, the southern section of the Katahdin Woods and Waters Monument. And at mile 1, there's a scenic overlook where you can see Katahdin. Or at least you could usually see Katahdin. Clouds have moved in from the west. The top of the mountain is obscured. The bottom is still shaded. It's kind of a blue smudge in the horizon. But I'll bet under ideal conditions, that'd be a pretty good view. One thing you get out of this, I mean, we talk about this really isn't all that special. Why put a national monument or national park in this area when much of the Maine woods looks like this? And I guess that's kind of the point. Much of the Maine woods looks like this, but it doesn't look like Boston, doesn't look like Connecticut, doesn't look like the entire eastern seaboard. When you look at the east coast of Maine, this is actually a unique area. Just hit the mile 3 marker on the 16-mile loop. And my last recollection when I was in here 3 years ago was that the area really had been cut hard before it was acquired and then reacquired by the federal government. This area had really been heavily logged, and at mile 3 you can really see some patches that were completely stripped. But in just the last few years, I'm impressed by how much of it has grown back. We talked about this area having been cut, and a lot of people complained this wasn't a particularly park-worthy area because of all the vegetation that had gone missing under previous ownerships. But I'm impressed by how fast it's growing back. Another 10, 15 years, people are going to be wondering why anyone ever had that conversation. I will say that I've been driving this at a very slow pace with the windows rolled down, listening for birds, because that's one of the other things I'm doing here on this particular trip today is finding out what kind of bird opportunities there are in here. It's just something I do. And the variety is nice. There's plenty of birds. It's not terribly different than what I would expect in Bangor City Forest over my first 3 miles so far. Right at the mile 4 marker, a pile of wet moose poop. And actually, that's the first sign of a moose I've seen in the 4 miles I've traversed so far, including some wetlands that look like they might be attractive. But it does answer the question, are there any moose in here? Oh, there's a snowshoe hare right in front of me. Come on, little buddy. Oh, there he goes. So this road is just a dirt road. Obviously, no heavy traffic comes in here because there's no potholes. There's no big moguls that you find on all the logging roads in the area. It's actually better than the camp road I live on. And easy enough, not only for cars, but mountain bikes would just have a field day in here. And I've now been inside the National Monument for over an hour, and I have not seen a soul. At about mile 5.5, the Katahdin Loop Road swings suddenly to the right. Going straight ahead, there is an old logging road that is now used as a trail for mountain biking, hiking, and even horses. It's a horse trail, which really thrills the riders and confuses the bears. I think one of the things that's been interesting about the trip so far is that it's more developed than I thought. That is, there's more trail infrastructure, more parking places, more opportunities to go up mountains than I thought they would be ready for this early in the park's history. I think the only thing that really is lacking is toilets. But that's because I'm spoiled by Baxter State Park, where there's pit toilets every 10 minutes. Just coming up at the mile 5 marker, and now I'm starting to feel right at home in the North Maine woods. A very familiar sight just on the left side of the trail, a discarded Bud Light can. If you're in the Maine woods and you see something blue, that's always what it is. Okay, in the area mile 6, there's a scenic overlook. I am now there. And it's brand new, obviously just brand new. They've got picnic tables up here, a good pit toilet, so I have to eat those words. And they've got a couple of pedestals where they're going to put the interpretive signage. Apparently those aren't done yet, but they've carved into the baseboard what I'm seeing. And as I look due south, great view of Millinocket Lake. A little bit more to my right in the great distance, Joe Mary Mountain is available. And then if I look off to the right a little bit, supposedly in the great big distance, I should be able to see Big Moose Mountain from here over on the other side of Moosehead Lake. That's a long way from this spot, and in this overhanging clouds, I don't think I'm going to see that. And over at this kiosk, I am looking at Katahdin, looking due west. South Peak is dead ahead of me. Pomola is to the right. So I can certainly see where inside Baxter State Park would be. I can see over where Chimney Pond Campground would be. Just about everything of Baxter State Park in the southern end lies directly in front of me as I look west from here. This day-use area is going to be a great place for picnicking. I'm getting a few black flies up here right now, I should admit. The governor was correct about occasional mosquitoes and maybe a few black flies. But so far, I've been in the park for over an hour and have not felt the need to put on DEET. I'm somewhere in the neighborhood of mile 7 on the 16-mile loop road. And anyone who said that you can't see Katahdin from inside the monument is incorrect. I'm just driving straight at it right now, another section of the road that is getting great views. And then it suddenly closes on me both sides with really low stuff. Obviously, this whole area was harvested probably 10 to 15 years ago. That's just a borderline guess. And it's all growing and regenerating very quickly now. I think one of the things that I'm surprised about is how much elevation there is inside this monument. A lot of this has been up and down, and to some significant heights, 1,000, maybe 1,500 feet is going to be my guess. In some ways, much more deciduous than I would have expected. I was hoping to find some coniferous areas with spruce, fir, tamarack, but I'm getting mostly maple, beech, birch. Oh, here's a pretty section. Ooh-yeah! Approaching mile 8. Another section of the woods that is somewhat logged over, and therefore provides just an incredible view of Katahdin right out the driver's side window. I think one of the things the monument's going to have to decide sooner or later is to how to keep some of these vistas open, because as this all grows back up again, if I were here 20 years from now and they did nothing, I couldn't see a thing. It'd all be trees. So keeping some of these views open is something that the monument's going to have to think about, and I'm sure they have. But that's quite the vista right there that I was not really expecting during this loop road. Mile 8, another scenic vista and a picnic table set up right here. And a deer just jumped across the path. So apparently there is wildlife in here. There's just no people. Still here at mile 8, the picnic table oversight. Just got something I was not expecting. As I mentioned a moment ago, this is a more or less deciduous area. And I just heard a fox sparrow sing pretty close, and I associate those more with coniferous areas, more of the mountaintops and the conifer, spruce, fir areas of Maine in the North Woods, but not in a spot like this, so I got to rethink this. I mean, in the last moment, I've heard chestnut-sided warbler. They're all over this field down below me. Common yellowthroats, veeries everywhere. A black-throated blue warbler just sang. These are areas that I would not necessarily associate with the fox sparrow, so apparently the mix of vegetation up here is cooler than I thought. We're on a road trip. You're in the passenger seat, and we're now at mile 8 of the loop road inside the new Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument. As we head into a break, I can tell you that not much is going to happen for the next 4 miles. So when we return, we'll meet you at mile 12. We'll wrap up the visit, and then I'll get the park superintendent on the phone, and he can tell me everything I missed and everything I got wrong. Hey, this radio show goes to great lengths to avoid fake news. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. This is Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket with Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. I'm in the driver's seat, you're riding shotgun, and we're traveling the Katahdin Loop Road inside the new National Monument east of Baxter State Park. Katahdin Woods and Waters. We're most of the way around now. These are my first impressions, so everything we're seeing through the windshield may be wrong. Coming up, we'll chat with the park superintendent to see what I got right. There are a lot of old logging roads here that are now being used for horses, bikes, and hikes. So the truth is, we haven't even scratched the surface of what's here. We're at mile 12. Mile 12 loops to the right and continues to keep going around the loop. If you go straight, you get to an area that's obviously an old logging road that's now in very good shape. You could take a Winnebago down this, but it's used as an access road for emergency vehicles and for hiking, biking, and for horses. And it goes up Barnard Mountain, which is about a 1,550-foot mountain. And it goes into a part of the park that is not accessible by vehicle currently. Somewhere down there, there's Katahdin Lake Lean-To, because at this point in the park, I'm somewhere just east of Katahdin Lake. Got about 4 miles to go in this loop to see what this is all about on the loop road. Katahdin Loop Road, mile 15. Gotta say, the back half of this loop is pretty much just a ride in the woods. There's no spectacular scenery to speak of. There are some good trails leading off it that are old logging roads that go good places. But aside from that, if you just did the first half and then repeated it, you'd be just as well off. Just saying. Mile 16, I have completed the 16-mile Katahdin Loop Road inside Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument. I guess impressions, obviously first half has the better vistas, second half is a drive in the woods, but it's an interesting woods. First biggest impression, I didn't see anybody else here. I have had this entire monument to myself. Now that won't last forever. Second big impression, this is new. This is just under development. It wasn't even a national monument until 6 months or so ago. And so you wouldn't expect a lot of development, and there isn't yet. There are some good trailheads, there are some good roads, there's some good parkings and pull-offs and picnic areas. There's a few privies. All that is in here, but there's not a lot of development. You wouldn't expect a big tourist destination to be this developed yet when it's still this young. When you think about it, what did the Great Smoky Mountain National Park look like when it was first developed? It was probably just Tennessee forest land. For a long time, I was skeptical about it was possible to have or even worthwhile to have a national park or even national monument up in this neck of the woods. What's so special about it when much of Maine looks like this? But then I had visits about 5 or 6 years ago to Congaree National Park. That's not far out of Columbia, South Carolina. Just stumbled on it by accident. I didn't even know it was there because it was a pretty new park, and I just saw a road sign and said, well, I got to check this out. And I would go back in a heartbeat, throw them my credit card and PIN number, and experience that again. And it was through a wet forest with a boardwalk over it. I'd never seen anything like it, and it was incredible. Well, for somebody from a city, this would be an incredible experience, too. It's just a broad expanse of forest bordering Baxter State Park, the Duchesne area, that entire section of the state of Maine that is unlike anywhere else on the eastern seaboard of the United States, or even in the continental United States. So it is special, but it's so natural to us, we kind of take it for granted. So there you have it, my first impressions of the new National Monument. It's more or less what you can expect if you visit the Loop Road this summer. It is not what you can expect in the future. Things will be changing and improving, and local folks will have a big say in it. In fact, they already have. The Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument held a series of community listening sessions in Stacyville, Medway, Millinocket, and Bangor last fall. More are planned. So far, over 550 people have attended. Lots more send in written comments. This was a chance to hear directly from interested citizens in communities surrounding the monument, trying to get a better idea of what you want and really start to identify the issues and opportunities that will inform additional public discussions for the management plan going forward. It's a 3-year beginning management plan. Printed copies of the report are also available at libraries and town offices in some of those communities, including Millinocket, East Millinocket, Medway, Stacyville, Sherman, and Patton, and they've got it at the Katahdin Area Chamber of Commerce. Coming up, Tim Hudson joins today's show by phone. He is park superintendent, and everything we've seen and talked about is his job. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. Welcome back to Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. So far in today's show, you've ridden along with me on a first impressions tour of Maine's new national monument, Katahdin Woods and Waters. Tim Hudson is park superintendent. How do my first impressions line up with his experience and the plans for the future? What is this park now, and what is it going to be? I spent 4 hours in the Loop Road and didn't see a soul, so is that normal? Welcome, Tim.
Well, happy to be here.
Maine's governor said this was a big mosquito area, but I didn't see many, so did I go to the wrong place?
We probably went at the right time. Like any place in Maine, at the wrong time, there's mosquitoes. But if you got up higher there, the mosquitoes have died off, and if you had a little wind, I'm sure it was a great trip.
Yeah, I didn't use any repellent or anything yesterday. I had a perfectly fine day in the woods. I was trying to go during black fly season, but we had such a long winter that you just couldn't get in there yet.
Well, yeah, the black flies were out early, and it's been wet, as you know. Well, we've had a lot of rain up there, much more than's happened in the south. So I think last weekend we have 2 or 3 days in the last week where we got over an inch of rain there.
Well, my overall impression was that this is still in the early stages of a work in progress. You have your hands full.
Yeah, certainly a work in progress. It's the basics are there on the loop and the road, but we need to. That's part of what would look at the 3-year plan for management of how we put things together, where we develop things a little bit more, where we don't develop, and how things go. As you'll notice when you went around, there's parking and there's places to pull off, but it's if you get too many vehicles up there, it's going to get a little disorganized. So one of our first goals is to organize those popular parking areas to get some structure to them, like up on the viewpoint.
Yeah, I think people who go in there now saying, hey, we're going into a national monument, may not realize that it's only been a national monument since last August. And, of course, the winter you can't do a whole lot. So the period of time for actually making improvements and doing construction has been extremely limited since this was established.
Well, and this spring we did not even get to the road. The Swift Brook Road wasn't even open until a week before Memorial Day. So a lot of the work that will happen there will be post-season in October and after the leaf peepers are gone. We get heavy visitation if the weather's good there. But we've got a period after Labor Day and after school starts where the weather's a little bit more favorable usually to doing some of those things. So some of those things will happen this fall, but it's going to be it's a step-by-step process. It's not going to be explode into complete development. I think other people need to understand that unlike a lot of the parks in the east, this is more like a rural park in a lot of ways in the west, and so it's a different experience. And most places in the east would not have gravel roads going in, so that becomes, I think, a challenge for us because safety is our primary concern. But it's also an experience for people who don't have that. I was with someone yesterday, and I don't think they'd ever been on more than 10 miles of gravel road in their life.
I thought it was funny because in the drive-in there on the Swift Brook Road, that road is a little bit rough, but it's not nearly as bad as the camp road I live on. So every day I deal with worse than that.
Well, it's funny you say that. We've actually going to start do some spot grading on that. Actually, today it's starting to get the soft spots out from the winter. We're waiting until things stabilize, but the rain just keeps coming, so we're going to take a shot at it. But it's like you say, you take care going in. It's certainly passable, but you're not going to speed down that road, which is a good thing.
Yeah, right. Well, the loop road itself I thought was in great shape. It's still rougher in places, especially going up some of the larger hills, which with more rocks than sand. So it's not quite the kind of road you'd find in Baxter State Park, for instance, but it's also a whole lot better than most of the logging roads I'm used to going over.
Yeah, that last year, right before we opened, we crushed some gravel and got it up there. And that one section you're talking about does not have a lot of fine material, so it's got some gravel. There's rock underneath. I know exactly which section you're talking about.
Yeah, I bet you do. So there's a bunch of side roads, too, that used to be logging roads, and they're mostly used now for mountain biking and horses. Is there any plan to open any of those up for more driving opportunities, or will those remain the way they are?
Oh, I think that's part of the whole management plan is how far do you go with those. They're blocked off. Many of the ones that right now are open to the northern part of the monument that you didn't go to, there's much more an extensive network up there that's open for mountain bikings and through hiking. Some of those roads, I think, yes, if they go to destinations, we'll use them. But the ones that go to just to a dead end and go down somewhere and stop, that's probably not going to be something that needs to be kept open or can be restored. But the ones that go to view areas, or there's places where we look at new trails. But that's all what we're looking for is ideas of where to go and how to manage it, because there's opportunities in places there that are not accessible through the timber right now.
Well, Sandbank Pit has 2 or 3 camping sites. There's a few lean-tos on the refuge, but it's not exactly a camping destination yet. Will it be?
I think it will be. We also want to encourage people with campgrounds right around the area, too. There's campgrounds right around there. So it's not, I think there'd be an assortment of things. The Sandbank Campground, one of our goals is to organize that a bit more and get a few more sites in there. And I think ultimately small campsites like that are for car camping, as you say, there's only a few, and that has come up in the comments, and I think that's something that we'll start to address in an overall strategy. We just don't want to put them in catch as catch can. You want to think about where you're doing it, spread it out where people want to go. So we'll learn a lot this summer. This is really the first summer. It is the first summer we've been open.
Yeah, and people need to remember that. I will say, however, the previous owners did a pretty good job of getting that road, that loop road, into shape where it could be used and taken over.
They did a great job of that because it took a bunch of the old logging roads and hooked them up. What you're looking at is connections between old logging roads. So some of the turns, look, what am I doing here? Well, I'm switching from one road to the other to make that loop. So they used as much of the existing disturbance infrastructure as was already there and built upon that. And that's been a real popular drive because you climb up, you see views, there's lots of birds. I've seen, last week I saw a moose every time I went over it, but it's just there's lots of things living in there that you can see, and every day is a little bit different.
Well, I did search it for birds. I had a great day. And it has to do with the forest. You know, some of the complaints of people who didn't think this was a good idea said the area had been heavily harvested. Why would you put a park there? But what I'm seeing is that forest is growing back up very fast.
Oh, yes, the viewpoint you can see right there, that was completely, was opened up for views about 3 years ago, and you can see now that we're going to have to start managing that and get it back down to keep the view open, vista clearing as we term it.
Yeah, you've got the same situation at mile 8, I think, up the top of that hill, and then a couple of other viewpoints beyond that where if you don't continually keep it open, the trees are going to go up and block the view.
Right, and that's that's part of the plan. Those things we will do one-off right now because those are existing places. And there's also areas you saw where the pullouts are pretty marginal for some, one car. So that thing's making things easier for more people to go there. Before we opened, they were getting on a loop road for the 3 years it was open before was about not quite 600 vehicles a year, and last year after we opened we had 1,250 go through, and this year after last week we were at about 1,050, and literally that was just through 4th of July weekend. So that's part of the management of managing people and make sure that everybody just has a good time, is not in each other's way. That's also part of the we're looking hard at this year to see what we get.
It was really remarkable to me. I was in there for about 4 hours, and I didn't see a single person the entire time. Later on, I heard from a friend by email that he'd actually been in there about 2 hours after me, so I guess there were at least 2 cars in there on Monday.
Well, we've been averaging around a little over 20 cars a day through the loop road.
As I was driving out, there was somebody with mountain bikes on the back of their vehicle, and they were going in, and they had Pennsylvania license plates. So how many people nationally have figured out that there's actually something special there?
Oh, quite a few. We've had inquiries from all over the country, and you'll see, I was talking to a group from Michigan the other just 2 days ago in the campground. They had their bikes in the back, but they were urban bikes, as they call them, so they probably weren't going too far. But the biking community is well aware of it, and that is, we get a lot of calls and coming in for mountain bikes, not single trackers, but people want to see out there. It's become very popular. That north end, we never had a counter up there before. We've had about 425 cars come through there this year since we opened, and that goes in 4.5 miles and then stops, and you're on bikes or on foot, or you're doing a show, you're dragging your canoe out or going to the water, taking a look.
Yeah. I haven't done any part of the north end yet. That's now on my to-do list sometime later on this summer. So you can expect to hear from me again, and we ought to go up there and take a look, and you can really show me around.
Good. Let me know. We'll take you up around. Come up again anytime.
That's Tim Hudson, Superintendent of the Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument. If you're planning a visit, the hardest part will be getting there. Once again, it is official state policy in this current administration to not allow any directional signs to get you there. It is, however, easier than it looks. Go up the highway to Sherman, drive Route 11 into Stacyville, and go in the Swift Brook Road, and when you get to the monument, you'll see the signs right there at the edge. Part of that is a private logging road, so remember the logging trucks always have the right-of-way. Don't block the road. Don't park on bridges. Don't be stupid. Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine is brought to you by Hammond Lumber, Bar Harbor Whale Watch, Napa Auto Parts, and EBS. Join me again every Saturday at 9, Sunday at 8, and online afterwards at 929theticket.com. This is Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket.